started for those that did want to learn also. So a Sheva Brachos means that there is the custom by a Jewish wedding to celebrate for a week. A week is like a cycle of life. Just like when we mourn for a week.
Mm-hmm.
So when we celebrate for a week. Now, the week-long celebrations are not obligatory. The only, I guess, obligatory one you could say would be the two that happen at the wedding itself, meaning under the chupa, there are 7 blessings. Those are pretty obligatory. You shouldn't skip them. At the end of the wedding, by a Jewish wedding, there's washing, there's bread, and then there's blessing after the bread. Because the bride and groom, the chatan and kala, the chassan and kala are there, and it's the week of their wedding, we make the 7 blessings again. So if you've ever been all the way at the end of a wedding, 2 a.m, they have to make the after blessing over a cup of wine, and just like by the chuppah, they go around and give the bride and the groom 7 blessings. And at the end, the bride and the groom and anyone else that wants to partake drinks from that cup of wine. Similarly, for the entire week, anytime they want, any gathering they're in could be what's called Sheva Brachos. You can have 10 a day. What does it mean, a Sheva Brachos? It means that they're washing for bread. It's a bread meal. You want to serve bread and salt. That's a meal. You want to serve bread and 27 other things. That's a meal, but there's got to be bread there because they've got to make the blessing after the bread to be able to make the blessing. So that's why there has to be bread. Everything else is optional. You want to serve cheese. You want to serve sardines. Doesn't make a difference what you serve. There's got to be bread. And there have to be 10 Jewish men 13 and older. You have to have 10 Jewish men aged 13 and older. And at least one of those men could not have been by the wedding or any other Sheva Brachos. It is an interesting concept that a component of joy is something fresh, something new. So if everybody by the Sheva Brachos, by this week party, was previously, well, we already were all there, so like it's exciting, but it's not that exciting. But if there's someone new, oh, that's exciting. So now we have the real excitement. So you need to be the week from the wedding, at least 10. You want to have 5,000, no problem, but at least 10 Jewish men aged 13 and older that can make an after blessing, meaning they all have to eat from the bread. And at least one person has to be new. And then you make the after blessing. And again, over a cup of wine, you have these 7 blessings to bless the couple. You want to do that 10 times a day? No problem. Just eat 10 meals of bread a day, no problem. And have in each meal at least 10 men, at least one of them has to not been there before. Most people do it once a day for the week. Do you have to do it? No. There's no obligation to do any of them, besides at the wedding itself. You say, we're going off to Miami for the next week and we're not going to be with any groups of people and no one's making parties for us. No problem. There's no obligation at all. In no way does it impinge on the sanctity or the kosher of the wedding if they don't have these parties. But the idea of the parties is to obviously celebrate and to obviously have a forum to bless the couple. Because at each one of these parties, as they end with the blessing, these are these 7 blessings that we're blessing the couple with. Any questions on all that? Okay, so Menucha, what were you saying? I cut you off when I said, let me teach something here, so I'll teach about it.
No, they had like the religious ceremony. They had all of this you described, and it lasted from 4:30 till like almost 4 hours.
The religious ceremony is usually like 40 minutes.
I don't know. It was 4 hours before they went to the hall where they
What were they doing for 4 hours?
It was pretty long.
What were they doing for 4 hours?
Well, we were dancing.
praying, yes. Chupa.
The chuppah itself takes about 40 minutes. Javi, you're muted. You're still muted.
Okay. It was Kabbalat Panim.
Kabbalat Panim, you're
Before-
saying technically how long it could take? You could do Kabbalat Panim in 20 minutes, 15 minutes.
No, I'm saying we had Kabbalat
Oh, you
Panim.
had a long one. You could do as long as you want.
Long.
Okay, so they had a long Kabbalat Panim,
then
then
Chupa,
a chuppah.
and then we went back to
Uh-huh.
the same kind of like a kosher spot.
Venue,
And we
yeah.
had hora dancing, all of this,
Uh-huh.
right? And still finish eating bread. And then that's again, Sheva Brochas, как in the end of the meal.
Right. Okay, and all that took 4 hours.
About
About
Okay, that
maybe a
makes
little
sense.
less.
Yeah,
less, maybe
Okay.
3.5.
Okay,
something
then what
like
happened
that.
after that?
After that, we left and they went to continue celebrating till 2
celebration.
o'clock in the morning.
Then we did the
Okay,
Russian-
so that
Russian
was wedding
style.
part 2.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So where did they go for wedding part 2? Like to a restaurant, to
The
a
same-
hotel?
No,
Different, it's
Next door.
same venue, but next door,
Big
like
hall.
deep hall.
A
Yes.
hall. Oh, okay, so you're saying the kosher
Wait,
part of the
hall.
wedding was the first 4 hours, and then they continued doing what they want, but thank
4
God they had a
hours.
kosher wedding. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. That's what you want. They had a kosher wedding. Thank God.
Yeah, they
Thank God.
signed.
That's a very big blessing. And Rivka had a kosher wedding also. And I was present at, and my husband was present at, and we were involved in. And if anyone is married and did not have a kosher wedding, it is not too late. There's nothing that can bring more blessings to your marriage than a kosher wedding. So
Rivka.
yes, I was very grateful. And what sparked Rivka's kosher wedding? Because I remember she was by my son's Sheva Brachas. When my son Mendy got married, he got married in New York, and Chava came actually, which was super special. And I had Sheva Brachas here. I only was able to make one Sheva Brachas in Chicago because they got married in New York, and they were in New York, then they flew to Colorado, and they came here the last night you can make a Sheva Brachas. So I can only make one. So I said, who do I want to invite? I want to invite the people from this class. So I invited the people from this class, and some of you were able to come, some of you weren't, of course, but a number came. It was very special. And I remember I was sitting, and I was talking with Rivka and a few other people. Rivka said she never had a kosher wedding. I'm like, you never had a kosher wedding? That's bizarre. How could you be living a religious life and not have a kosher wedding? So I guess my shock was strong enough to get her to make it happen. And that was very beautiful. And also, like you're saying, like Menucha's saying, the hand of God picking the date of that wedding. I remember there was a lot of hand of God picking the date of Rivka's wedding. And that was very special. Very special. So if anyone's to make a kosher wedding, you have to be married to a Jew. But if you're married to a Jew and did not have a kosher wedding, see me. We do it. We would be so excited. And of course, some of you, of course, probably remember the beautiful wedding we made for Basia. That was very special. Very special. It's a very beautiful thing. And I will share, since he's told me this so many times, I'm sure he's told many other people. So I can share for those of you that were close to Basia, that I remember when I spoke in the class at some point, I think connected with the Parsha. At that time, the class has obviously morphed through many different topics. And that time we were doing Parsha. But I tried to pick things in the Parsha that were relevant, obviously. So we somehow were speaking about Jewish weddings. And I remember Basia saying, oh, she never had a Jewish wedding. I'm like, oh, we could have one now. Just get your husband to agree. Sure. She goes home. He says, no way. Of course not. Like, what are you talking about? So that was the end of that. I remember we spoke about it a few times, and he never was so interested, like very typical. Usually I find the women like it and the men don't. That's very normal. And then, of course, Basi got sick, and then the topic got raised again. And then, of course, he said, fine, he would do it for her. So so we made the wedding. We were very happy to make the wedding, of course. And the number of you were there. Baruch Hashem was very beautiful. And I remember by the wedding, Basi's husband being so happy And he thanked me so much for making the wedding. And I was like a little surprised because I knew he was just doing it to go along for her. And he, which was fine. Like, I respect that. And like, he was so happy by the wedding. He was so happy. Afterwards, he told me this more than once. He said, when I was standing under that chuppah with Basia, with Olga, as he said, I was so overwhelmed. I was so drained. I had everything on me. I had her medical condition. I had running the household. I had taken care of the 2 girls. I had financial issues. I had so much on my plate. And I felt like I couldn't handle it. And when I was standing under the chuppah and your husband said the blessings, I think my husband just said all 7. When your husband said the blessings, I felt God come into our marriage. And I felt that it wasn't just me and Olga. It was me, Olga, and God. And then I knew I had the strength and I knew we'd make it. And he felt it so tangibly that years later, I mean, he's told me this more than once, that strong impression of feeling God come in to the 2 of them as they were standing under that chuppah. So I don't know how many other people can feel it as tangibly, but it was very, 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 very powerful statement that he's made. So for anyone that would like, or know someone else that would like, I'm generous with our services. So if you know somebody else that would like to get married in a godly fashion and bring God in, it doesn't mean you don't have any work to do. You do have work to do. Marriages always require work. But to bring God into the work, I'd be very, very, very happy to do that. And that's very, very, very special. And I'm so happy that Emily started off her marriage right.
Yeah, by the way, Basi's husband played violin yesterday during the chuppah and the whole ceremony. And it was so beautiful. And I was thinking about his wedding.
That's so beautiful.
Definitely. Yes.
So she was there through him. That's very beautiful.
She was there. Yeah.
That's very beautiful.
It was amazing.
When you're by a chuppah, you can feel sometimes, if you're sensitive, the souls that are there. It says by a chuppah, for sure, we know comes back 3 generations, which means the parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents all are going to come to the chuppah. So whenever I'm at a chuppah, if it's my own children, or if it's my cousins or my nieces or my nephews or anyone that I would have a relative there, I always tune in to be focused on my parents, my father or my grandparents, that I know are by that chuppah. But I felt other people also. I remember very strongly by my son, by Mendy's chasana that I was referencing before. I remember feeling my aunt very strongly there. My aunt was very close to my son. I knew she was there. It was very strong. I remember feeling a rabbi there, a rabbi who was very close to my husband. I knew he was there. I felt him very strongly. So for sure, people can come back to be by the chuppah because that's like a real significant event in your life and in the life of your children. And, they come. So that's very, very, very special. And I'm so happy that Emily was able to start off in the best fashion possible.
It was very special. I felt like, I don't know, I was so happy. I thought I was like shining and radiant. Like I was
You were
walking under the hood.
You were shining.
Yeah, like I can't express. And I was thinking about my parents and grandparents being there. I'm not that sensitive as you are still, but I thought I felt some presence. Very special.
Yeah, you can feel. I don't think you have to be super sensitive. You are radiant and shining then. I remember once at a wedding seeing a friend of mine who's like, so quiet, in her appearance and her personality. And I remember seeing her by her first taught child's wedding. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's beautiful. I just never noticed, because she's quiet. So her beauty was also quiet. But by the wedding, it wasn't quiet. It was so shining and it was such an amazing beauty. So I think all of our beauty does shine so freely by the time of a wedding of a child or your own wedding or a grandchild. It's something to hold in your heart forever. The pictures are good, but it's more what's in your heart. I remember I put so much energy into the photographer. I never had the patience afterwards to look at the pictures. I don't know, they're like on the computer, this, that. I couldn't be bothered. I thought I was very strange. And then I spoke to my machatena stuff, my daughter-in-law's mother, and she told me she also never looked at them. So I said, okay, I feel more normal, you know. But it's in your heart. It's in your heart forever. And God willing, she should just have mazal and bracha. She just have mazel and blessings revealed mazel and revealed blessings shining.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I wanted to start, that was the beginning, but we'll continue the beginning. I did have some questions that came in, so I wanted to answer them. And then we'll continue if we have time to continue what we were talking about. Okay, this first question is about a question about a detail of Shabbos observance. And the question is, how do you make tea on Shabbos? So that was an interesting question because it's actually a little bit complicated making tea on Shabbos. And there's two reasons why it's complicated. One reason why it's complicated is because some foods are considered by the sages as very easy to cook. They cook very quickly. And tea is one of those foods, meaning tea leaves are considered something that cooks so quickly, so fast. I mean, compare tea leaves to like a piece of meat, you know? So tea leaves super quick. I mean, meat cook super slow, but so something that cooks super quick is a little more dangerous on Shabbos because you're not allowed to cook on Shabbos. So if something cooks very easily, we're a little more scared that we might mess up and God forbid cook it on Shabbos, and we're not allowed to cook on Shabbos. So that's one issue that makes making tea a little complicated. The other issue that makes making tea a little complicated is the tea bag itself. That there's a fear that the tea bag could be sort of like a sieve, you know, like if you would pick up a tea bag and think of the water coming out through the tea bag and the leaves. So that's another, not to go into exactly the reasons why, but that's another technical issue that makes making tea a little complicated. Now, there are various answers. So how do you make tea on Shabbos? So I'm going to give you one answer. There are others out there. If you make it a different way and your rabbi told you to make a different way, I'm not telling you he's wrong. There are various opinions. I'm just giving you sort of a general opinion. Personally, we do it differently. I'm not telling you what we do, but I'm just saying this is like giving you a general standard opinion. To give you this general opinion, I'm going to explain a little bit about the idea of cooking on Shabbos. When you have this concept of heating up something on Shabbos, like let's say with hot water, we have what we call the first vessel, the second vessel, and the third vessel. The first vessel or the first cup is where, I'm going to say the water in this case, where the water is cooking it. The water could be in a pot on your blech or on your hot plate. The water could be in an electric urn. That's the first cup, literally where the water is now when it's by the source of heat. If the source of heat is electric, if the source of heat is gas, when the water is boiling by that source of heat. You then take that first cup, the pot, the urn, the kettle, the chaynik, whatever it's in, and you pour it into a clean, dry cup. Note the words clean and dry. It has to be completely clean, completely dry. You pour it in. This now becomes my second cup. I should take 2 cups to demonstrate. I now have another cup that's perfectly clean and perfectly dry. I pour the water in. This is now called my third cup. One second. When you can be a visual teacher. This is my first cup. It's not a cup, it's a pot. Our sages call it your first cup, so I'm going to call it your first cup. We're going to pretend this is hot boiling water It was on my blech, it was on my hot plate, it's hot boiling water. I take a cup, clean, dry cup. I pour my water in. This is now cup number 2. No, it's cup number 1. You're really confused. It's cup number 2 because this is called cup number 1. Vessel number 1, vessel number 2. Cup number 1, cup number 2. It's a little confusing because it's my first cup. It's called cup number 2. I now take a clean, dry cup and I pour it in, losing none in the process, of course. This is now cup 3. You say it's cup 2. I say it's cup 3. This was cup 1. This was cup 2. This is cup 3. At this point, I add to this cup my tea leaves. These don't look like tea leaves. Well, we'll pretend. But I would pour in, we'll call this my tea leaves, and that's how I make my tea on Shabbos. Now, what am I pouring in? What I'm actually pouring in, I didn't say I put a tea bag in here. I don't want to use a tea bag on Shabbos, because I told you that could be complicated. So before Shabbos, take, depending on how much tea you drink on Shabbos, take 1 or 2 tea bags, put them in a cup, and pour in about this much hot water. And what you're making is what we call tea essence.
It's called zavaka.
Okay, thank you. That's just what I meant to say. In Yiddish, we call it, well, we call it essence. We call it the same thing, actually, zavaka. I meant that. So you take your zavaka and you pour it into this water. No tea bags are involved, okay? Your tea bags are not being poured in. Pour carefully in so your liquid's coming out, or before Shabbos, take out your tea bags. You do not want to deal with tea bags. You only want to deal with your zavaka, essence, tea stuff. Why? Why did I do it this way? For 2 reasons. One, I don't want to cook the tea. I'm not allowed to cook on Shabbos. Our sages say by the time you come to cup 3, you're thinking it's cup 2, but our sages call it cup 3. The water has been transferred twice. The water went from original source to the first transfer, from the first transfer to the second transfer. So it has lost its power to cook. I add to that my tea essence, so it's not really cooked. The water doesn't have the power to cook. And I'm using tea essence and not tea bags because of a separate problem with straining. You want to add sugar, no problem. You put it in here. You want to add lemons, problem. Why are lemons a problem? Lemons will be a problem if you like fresh squeezed lemon juice. You are not allowed to squeeze lemons on a liquid on Shabbos. You want to squeeze lemons on your salad? Permissible. You want to squeeze lemons into your tea? Forbidden. You want a lemony taste in your tea? Open up a bottle of real lemon and pour it in. Okay, no real lemons are allowed to be squeezed. Take something from the bottle instead. Into your tea. On your salad, no problem. In your tea, a problem. Adding sugar at this point, adding honey at this point, no problem. Any questions on how you make tea on Shabbos?
I now realize that I do have a question. So you emphasize that the cup has to be dry,
Absolutely.
but if we
So then you use a number of cups. You use a number of cups.
so
Or
if we have
what you-
several people,
So what you do, yes, I understand Rachel's question. Her question, she's gonna run out of cups. What if she has
Second
5
cup.
people at her table? She needs 10 cups. That's your
Yeah.
question, right?
yes,
So
exactly.
what you do, okay, that was a good question. So instead of doing it like I did it, the simple way, or just making for myself way, what you would do is you would take cup 1 and pour it into a pot. Pour it into an urn, a tureen, a big bowl,
Mhm,
and that becomes your cup 2.
uh-huh.
And then from there, you're gonna pour into each individual clean, dry cup.
That was a mistake we were making.
Good, that's why we had this class, awesome.
Wow.
I have a question also, if I can.
Sure,
I am making, like, I use I drink coffee and lemon with lemon, and I make also tea on Friday and keep it in like a, the container that keeps heat. So I don't
Like a
have to
thermos.
thermos, exactly. Is this allowed? Is this kosher way or no?
You made it the thermos on Friday?
Yeah,
So
on
you're not
Friday
adding
before
anything
Shabbat.
to it? Are you adding anything to it on Shabbos?
No, not at all.
So
It's
that's what we
already-
do. That's what we do. We make it on Friday and we put it in a thermos. So we
Yeah,
don't
that's
deal
what
with this at all. We just
Yeah.
literally open up our thermos and
Uh-huh.
pour it into the cup on Shabbos.
I
Now,
don't
again,
even,
once you pour it into that cup, you can add sugar to that cup. You cannot add fresh lemon. You still have that same issue that if you want fresh lemon, you had to have done it before Shabbos.
no,
You can't
no.
add
I
fresh lemon on
prepare it.
Shabbos.
I prepare it all before Shabbat and
That's
just drink
perfect.
it
That's
from
how
the
we do it.
thermos.
It's all in the thermos. You open the thermos, you just pour it in. You're good.
But if I don't even pour anywhere, I just drink it from thermos.
No problem, because you made it
Yeah.
all on Friday, so there's no issue
Right.
with cooking anything.
Okay.
Our
Yeah, I
whole
just did it.
fear is cooking, because you're not
Mhm.
allowed to cook. And the fear with tea, specifically actually tea, I was asked by tea, I think the person didn't realize it was such a loaded question, but tea is one of the things the sages say, cook quickly, so we have to be super careful. But so that's why if you want to be very cautious, you can do like me and Faye again, just make the whole thing on Friday, put it in your thermos, and you're good to go. You just open up your thermos, all is done.
I'm just learning that I do some things just intuitively. I don't know why, but it's just some kind of intuition, I guess.
And you know what I've seen also sometimes, like older Jewish women, like your grandparents, your mothers, your grandmothers, who like they didn't have an education, but somehow there were certain things they did right. And I think it was just something they probably saw their mothers or grandmothers do. And they didn't even know why they were doing it, but they did it
Definitely.
right.
Zavarka. We only
We
put
always made yes,
Zavarka 7
Zavarka.
days
We
a week.
always made Zavarka.
And is that
That's-
what all Russians did or just Russian Jews?
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
mean, it's hard to say, but
No, I'm just curious because if it was all Russians, it's a Russian thing. If it was Russian Jews, then it's a Jewish thing and it comes from this concept.
some things Russian could learn from Jews.
That's true too, but I have literally seen this speaking to people and then talking, sometimes I've had this, I can't even think of an example now, but like I'm teaching someone a law and the person will say, oh my gosh, my mother always did it that way. My mother wasn't religious at all. I don't know why she did it that way. And I'm like, probably because her mother or her grandmother did it that way. And maybe her mother's mother did it that way because they knew there was a religious concept and it just became how your mother did it. So that's how you did it. So yes, that idea of tea essence is definitely, again, I don't know if other Russians do it, but in America, I think it's only a Jewish thing. But it is how you do it because of Shabbos. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So a question about tea bag. So if I put tea bag, like everything like you described, and then in a third vessel, I put a tea bag, but I'm not taking it out.
Then you're
I'm
allowed to
keeping-
do it. If you
I'm
put the tea
keeping
bag
it
in and
there.
don't take it out, that's fine. The fear is exactly taking it out. That's exactly the fear. So if you're not going to take it out, you can put a tea bag in and leave it.
Okay.
Absolutely fine. Totally kosher.
I have another question.
Sure.
Why do we add tea essence second, not tea essence and then the water? Because
that's a
usually
very
the
good
bag-
question. Because in the cooking concept, how our sages explain it, there's the cup, which has a certain level of heat. And then if something's poured into the cup, it's a lesser level of heat. So if you took cup 1, you see, I love doing this. Cup 2, clean, dry, pretend. My cup 3. Now, if I poured my tea essence, this is very healthy stuff, by the way. It's called Star Anise. People that want a commercial for healthy things. Okay, you put your tea essence here. My new water that's just coming from cup 2 could cook this. It's still it's retaining a heat. But if this cup is clean and dry and I pour the water in and then I add the tea, it's already one more level removed. So it's less potent, the water. So we put one more level between us and cooking that tea leaves. So that's why we do it. We add the tea into the water and we don't add the water on top of the tea. Was that
There is
clear?
also a question of coloring. I
There
read in the
is,
book.
yes, people speak of the question of coloring as well, but honestly, besides coloring, it's the issue of cooking. It's technically, it's called eroy, it's called pouring. So if I add the water first and then the tea, it's less potent, the heat of the water, than if I put in the tea first and then pour the water on it.
So you're saying that tea essence, we are concerned with it. being
We're
cooked
concerned with
also?
cooking it, exactly. We're concerned with cooking it. So that's why I'm only adding it to my third cup. You're calling this my second cup, but the kettle was my first cup. I had my first cup, I had my second cup, this is my third cup, and I'm adding the tea to this third cup. So there shouldn't be so much heat. So I shouldn't be cooking that tea. That's why I do it that way.
Mhm.
Cyril,
Yes,
and what Howard said, instead of
instead of making your
essence of
Russian
the tea,
Jewish
you
tea
put
essence,
tea
you can just put a tea bag in that is
and
100%
not
legitimate.
touch it.
As long
Just
as you
leave
leave it in
it.
and don't take it out.
Okay.
That's 100% fine. Which for most people, I think for black tea would take it out. For herbal tea, probably would leave it in. I think I do like Fega. We make. I don't even do it. I say my husband makes it before Shabbos. Any other questions? Okay. Yes.
But yes, one short question.
Sure. No. I want you to know. Hashgacha process. I was asked this question. Yes.
Some sources say that you can take it out with a big spoon
Yes.
with water.
Yes.
Is that allowed?
It's allowed. It's allowed. I'm not saying it's not allowed. I said you, as long as your rabbi says, there are some people that say exactly what Rachel said. If you don't pick up the tea bag and you scoop it out with a spoon, so you're not going to be straining it, so therefore you're allowed to do it. If your rabbi told you to do it that way, it's 100% allowed. No problem. I was just telling you the most cautious, practical way that I've seen done. You are allowed to pick it up with a spoon. It's just, again, there's always that fear. What if? Shabbos is a very big thing. So why start with problems? But 100% legally, what the rabbi is telling you is correct. That is a kosher answer. You just have to be very careful to make sure nothing ever happens with your tea bag accidentally. But like Chava's idea of just leaving it in the cup, she knows she's leaving the cup and not touching it, staying there till after Shabbos. No problem. Yeah, perfect solution. But you can also use your solution with a big spoon, or you can use my solution and make a tea essence before Shabbos, or Fega solution and prepare the tea in your thermos, so you're totally good to go. Next question. So I was asked, if you make a blessing, okay, if you made a blessing, this is a question now on blessings. We're shifting gears for all people that are like, that was a long conversation. I'm making tea and I don't even drink tea. So maybe you eat. So this is about making blessings. So someone said, she was actually talking about tea, but I'll give a different example in case people are sick of hearing the word tea. She made a shahakol blessing and she had a yogurt. And then after she finished the yogurt, she decided to have chocolate. Does she make another shahakol blessing or not? That was her question. She was talking about tea and tea, but we're changing the subject from tea. So does she make another shahakol blessing? So this is the answer. This is my practical answer to you on this question. If you are making blessings, it's very beautiful to make blessings. If it's too hard for you to remember all the blessings, always make a shahakol blessing, because that blessing covers all blessings. And making blessings is a very beautiful thing to do, because you're acknowledging this is God's. Making blessings is your way of saying, God, can I eat this food? Thank you. I appreciate it. I asked permission and you said yes. That was so kind. So it's a very beautiful part of your relationship with God that before you eat, you make a blessing. Now, there are various blessings for various foods, but if that's already too complicated, you can always make the shahakol blessing on everything. So you're good to go. So talking about this blessing. So the answer is, technically speaking, maybe yes, but it gets very complicated. So therefore, the simplest thing to do is make a deal with yourself. This is your deal. Whenever I eat, I am making a blessing to cover all the foods I'm going to eat until I finish eating. And then I'm going to make an after blessing and I'm done. You can all make that deal with yourself right now. And that means from now on, whenever you make a blessing, so you made a shahakol blessing. Now you're like me. You have no thing in your head when you eat. You just eat. So you had a yogurt, you made a shahakol, and then afterwards you saw a nice piece of shahakol, a nice piece of chocolate. You're like, oh yeah, that's covered, because I had in my head anything. So it's covered. And then I see a piece of cheese, an egg, whatever, candy, I don't know, lots
Piece
of
of
shahakol in the
apple.
world.
What about piece of apple?
Well, no,
Apple.
because a piece of apple is a different blessing.
Right, but if
In
I'm
that same blessing, any food in that same blessing is covered. The only food not covered, if you make that deal with yourself, would be a new food that was not in your house when you made the blessing. Meaning,
okay, so that's, I have an apple in my house,
yes,
and I started with shahakol, and then I want a piece of apple,
so you made a ha'etz on your apple.
even though it was in my house.
Yeah, you made a ha'etz because it's a different blessing.
Okay, so
But then your husband graciously walked in the door with blueberries.
no, that's
That, you know, that's a
not-
different issue.
No, that's not realistic.
No, that's not realistic. Nobody's walking in the door and giving you blueberries.
No.
Not in the winter, not in Chicago. Okay.
No, realistic that I mean, I don't know what I'm going to eat. I start with something, and then I decided, oh, now I want this, and then I go and eat something else, and I could
My
start
gosh,
with-
that sounds like me, Chava. I didn't know your eating habits were as bad as mine.
I work at home for 2 years already. My eating habits is as bad as.
Oh no, yeah, that's a problem. Right.
Right.
So as you proceed eating, if you come across a new food that you didn't make the blessing on yet, you make a new blessing. But if it's a food that you already made the blessing for that food, you do not have to make a new blessing until you say your after blessing.
Right.
So Chava took a piece of egg. She had an egg. She made a shahakol on her egg. And then she decided she wanted a coffee. No problem. She already made a shahakol. She drinks her coffee.
Right.
And then she decided she wanted
Apple.
an apple. So she made a ha'etz because it's an apple.
And
And
then
then
I
she decided she
decided,
wanted an orange. She didn't make a new blessing because she already had that.
right,
And
And
that's
then
how
I
it
decided-
goes.
right,
If
and
someone
then I
knocks on your
decided-
door with food, that food you need a new blessing for because it wasn't in your house. So it definitely doesn't count. If once you make your after blessing, that means you said your meal is over. And then if you would eat something again, you would start all over again. We are not supposed to, though, make an after blessing and then eat something else right away. The idea is the after blessing means we finished eating. There's supposed to be a stop. We finished eating. So when we think we're done eating, we make our after blessing and then don't eat for a while to make sure you're done eating. And then you can make a new blessing and start all over. Any other questions on that idea? Okay. Now continuing along the blessing, I was asked, well, what if you have two foods combined in one? What did you do with your blessing? Like she said, what if I have salad with cheese? What blessing do I make? I have vegetable salad with cheese sprinkled in. So the answer to that is, it generally depends on quantity. Whichever is more, or is the main food, the more of the food, that's the blessing you would make. So even if you like the cheese more, and you're eating this salad over the other three salads on the table is because it's sprinkled in with this great cheese, it doesn't make a difference. In essence, it's a salad. The majority of the food you're gonna be eating is gonna be vegetables. So therefore you make the blessing for the vegetables, which is the ha'adama, even though you are eating cheese with it. If you had chicken soup with vegetables, you make the blessing of shahakol because of the chicken and the quantity of the chicken and the water, which far outweighs the quantity of the vegetables. But there's one exception to this. The exception to this is mizonos. That is considered, and hamotzi for that matter. That is obviously hamotzi, the blessing on bread covers everything. So if you make a blessing, if you're having bread with your food, you make the blessing on the bread and then everything is covered. We don't make any other blessings in that meal besides for dessert because the hamotzi covered all, and wine. You'd make a blessing on the bread, it covers everything except wine and dessert. But let's put bread on the side. If you have a little bit of a mizonot element, even though it's far outweighed, we say mizonot is more important, and therefore you make a mizonot on that item, even though it's quantitative wise, it's very small. Like a very simple, obvious example would be cheesecake. Cheesecake could have a thin crust on the bottom, and then the whole thing is cheese. And we make a mizonot. Well, that doesn't make sense. It's a tiny little crust, and the whole thing is shakol, cheese. Nope. It's one item, it's cheesecake. There's a little bit of cake there. That outweighs everything. This is cake, ladies. You make a mizonot. Or another example that might be more surprising to you is if you made your chicken soup I was talking about before, and you were very celebratory, maybe it's menucha, celebrating her daughter's marriage. So she made knedlach. How do you say knedlach in Russian?
Matzo balls.
That's Russian, okay. So you made your Russian matzo balls. Well,
No,
what's the blessing on matzo balls?
It's knedlach. There's no knedlach.
What's the blessing on knedlach? Do you know? Mizonos. So if you have knedlach cooked in your soup, your entire soup becomes mizonos.
Wow.
So you're eating a bowl of liquid, of chicken, some vegetables, and one matzo ball. And that whole soup becomes mizonos to the degree that even if you didn't eat a matzo ball, the soup is still mizonos because it was cooked with the mizonos. And that's the power of mizonos. It so outweighs everything else that if it's there, it's the blessing. It takes charge. It's the boss. It takes over. But in everything else besides mizonos, basically we see what's majority, and that's the blessing.
Is the same as for matzo balls, the same works for croutons?
Yeah, but the difference with croutons is if you sprinkle croutons in your soup, that bowl of soup is mizonos. But if you have another bowl and no croutons are sprinkled in, that bowl is shahakol because the croutons weren't cooked in the soup. But here you cook the matzo balls in, I cook my matzo balls in my soup. If your matzo balls are cooked in your soup, then that actually transforms the blessing of the whole soup. So even if you say, no, I'm watching my calories, I'll skip the matzo ball, your blessing is still mizonos on that soup because it has matzo balls cooked in it. Now, some people, when they make matzo balls, not me, that's too much work for me. Some people cook their matzo balls separate and they just add it to the bowl. So if you do it that way, then your soup is shahakol, and because there's a matzo ball in, the blessing is mizonos. And if you skip the matzo ball, the blessing is shahakol. But if you do it like I do it and you cook your matzo balls in the soup, it transforms the blessing on the soup, and the whole soup becomes mizonos because it has the mizonos item cooked in it. But taking Rachel's question, she means like soup croutons. We call them soup
Or salad, you can put them on salad. So everything.
Right, exactly. So if you would sprinkle those croutons on a mizonos crouton on a salad or in your soup, the whole thing becomes mizonos. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
That's the power of that. Something else here that I can't read. Chicken soup with vegetables. Important. Only tested, not real portion. Oh, okay. The last thing was, what if you're only tasting a little bit of a food, you need to make a blessing on it? So the answer is absolutely yes. Everything we eat, we must make a blessing before. The question in terms of amount is only on the after blessing. Any item that goes in our mouth, we have to ask God's permission before we put it in our mouth. Now, again, you already asked God's permission 20 minutes ago and have eaten countless things in between. But let's say you hadn't. Let's say you hadn't eaten anything now recently. So there was no blessing you just made. You're just tasting the food like every good cook, of course, tastes. So if you're eating just a drop, you must make a blessing before you taste. Do you make an after blessing? Not if you only tasted, you didn't eat enough to make an after blessing. But do you make an initial blessing? Absolutely. You have to make a blessing before you put the food in your mouth. Or you have had to have made a blessing recently of that gender, which covers this food as well. How much food do you need to eat to make an after blessing? 1 ounce. So if you eat an ounce of food, you can make a blessing after. But if you're eating a crumb of food, you make a blessing before. You always make a blessing before, but to make the after blessing, which is actually more severe, more significant, you need 1 ounce. In other words, the reason I'm saying it's more significant is because the after blessing, the original after blessing, which is on bread, is biblical. The hamotzi blessing afterwards, Birkat Hamazon, the blessing we say to thank God after bread or a meal with bread, is a biblical commandment. So because of that, all after blessings have more stringency than blessings before we eat, which is interesting because most people are more careful to make a blessing before than after, but whatever, that's sometimes people, they don't, whatever, you're supposed to do both. But any amount of food, a tiny crumb of food, you always make a blessing before. It's your way of saying, God, I know it's yours. Can I share it? And your blessing after is always saying, God, thank you for the food. And the blessing after has to be at least 1 ounce. And the blessing before, a crumb. Any amount that is swallowed, you need a blessing before.
Cyril, if, let's say, we added a little croutons to salad or soup, less than 1 ounce. So before we say mizanot, blessing them is after.
Borei nefashos.
Okay.
If it was a salad, yeah, 100%. Absolutely. If you would have some people are careful with, let's say, like rice, barley. There are various items that we're not sure what they really are, according to when law was talking about them. Rice and barley are both questionable because there were different items our sages weren't writing in English, so we don't know. We know they were talking about something. So both rice and barley both are part of that questionable pot. And because of various factors, they might be mizonot, they might be ha'adama, they might be shahakol. So what blessing do you make if you're going to eat rice or barley? So there's 2 options. There's really 3 options. The simplest option is make a shahakol, because in the end of the day, shahakol covers everything. So that's no problem. You make your shahakol, and then you make your after blessing borei nefashot. Others say you should be more careful, and maybe it's mizonot, and maybe it's hadama. You don't know, and you shouldn't make a shahakol. You're not like, it's not like you've never seen this item before. You just don't know if it's a shahakol or mizonot or hadama. So what you should do is eat 3 separate foods: a shahakol food, a mizonos food, and a hadama food, and then eat your barley or your rice. And it was covered because it was one of those 3 blessings. And other people say you should have it in a meal with bread, so then the bread covered everything, so you know for sure you're safe. So going to that middle opinion, to answer your question, if someone said, I'm going to serve rice tonight, so I'll eat a few croutons and a piece of celery and a piece of egg, and then I can eat my rice, what's my after blessing? Borei nefashos. If you just ate a few croutons, that didn't affect your after blessing at all. Your majority food then was this other stuff, so it's a borei nefashos. Okay, my gosh, that covered all of our questions, and that covered all of our class. Any other questions on this now that we're on this topic already? We're speaking about Shabbos, we're speaking about blessings. Okay, and we spoke about getting married, Jewish marriages. Very wonderful topic, very happy topic, very joyous topic. Thank you, Manucha, for adding joy to our class tonight. That was so nice. You have to bring pictures, and we'll do share screen, and you'll post them up and we'll all see them. We're not going to see you holding them up. We're going to do it right. We're going to share screen and we're going to see them for real. I'd be so happy to see them. All right. So thank you so much for asking questions, because I always feel, this is the best. These are authentic. These are questions that, help each of us. Maybe picked up one idea tonight that hopefully you can apply to your life. If you picked up more than one, wow, that's amazing. But if you picked up one and you could integrate it, it was an hour well spent. Thank you so much for joining.
You.
And mazel tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, menucha. Much, much Jewish nachas.
Thank you
Much,
so
much,
much.
much Jewish nachas. And Rena, the aunt. Much, much, much Jewish nachas.
Thank you.